Finding good succulent potting mix can be like searching for a needle in a haystack. The quality of ingredients can vary wildly from brand to brand, and often too much of the wrong thing can be used. To make matters more complicated, the bags used to store the potting mix are not see-through, so there is no way of telling what it looks like inside. Many a time, the only way to find the right succulent potting mix is to buy multiple bags from different sources, but there is a better way. In this video, I'm first going to show you what my ideal succulent potting mix looks like and what shouldn't be in it. Then we'll have a look at how to amend a bad potting mix and how to make your own. When I started growing succulents at my nursery, I was fortunate to find a superb potting mix nearly straight away, and I've been using the same mix for the last 10 years. And this is it. I use it for everything, to plant succulent seeds, leaf propagation, cuttings propagation and repotting for bigger plants. All our 300 plus species and varieties of succulents grow well in this potting mix. The leaves grow strong and healthy root balls in it and multiply in size at a fast rate. All succulents we grow from seeds such as this split rock have higher rates of germination. There are various components such as composted pine bark fines, minerals, sand, coir and also slow release fertilizer. The potting mix is made by a specialist company, delivered to us by the ton on a truck. Most of our growing space is outdoors, and the potting mix is perfectly balanced to retain enough moisture when we water while efficiently draining excess water to not stay soggy. Succulents, unlike many other plants, do not like to be watered constantly and have developed clever ways of storing water. If they are planted in a potting mix holding on to moisture, some succulents can easily rot or develop fungal disease. And ditto if during rainy periods the potting mix is not draining sufficiently. Having the right potting mix can make all the difference with many succulent plants. We've established succulents do not like wet feed, and therefore potting mix made especially for succulents should not be too heavy on sand and water retaining ingredients such as coir or moss. Sand can be heavily featured in some potting mixes, and when wet it stays soggy for long periods of time. It also weighs quite a bit. Heavy potting mix that retains water can kill more sensitive types of succulents and make even the more resilient ones grow slow or develop fungal marks. Potting mix made predominantly out of peat moss can get most succulents rot when overwatered. I'm also of the opinion there are just not enough nutrients in such potting media. Many wholesale nurseries seem to favor peat moss as potting mix, but they have greenhouses where watering is carefully controlled. Succulents are also not big fans of too much nitrogen. Potting mix for succulents should not contain manure or too much compost and should not smell of manure or ammonia. While many may disagree with me here, but in my experience and opinion, succulent potting mix should not be too gritty. I have seen some that are almost exclusively made of various minerals or rocks and resemble loose gravel. When I tried growing succulents in such media, they did not do well in the long term and became too stressed. I've recently bought some stock plants from two different nurseries. They both use different potting mix and climate control greenhouses. I will compare their potting mix to ours. This here is 100% peat moss, and if my outdoor succulents were potted in just moss, many of them would almost certainly run into problems. When I get plants like this, I immediately remove the moss and repot. Peat moss is okay if you have a top of the range greenhouse with fans, but not suitable for the average grower. The potting mix the other nursery uses is better as it has grit, but in my opinion there's not enough of it. This nursery also grows their plants in waterproof climate-controlled greenhouses, and so they don't have to worry about rain or humidity. The mix is mostly peat moss and a bit of fine grit in form of minerals. I have tested this potting mix myself, and while it's okay when the weather is dry, succulents do not like it when it rains. Quite a few have rotted or developed some kind of dark fungal marks. And here they are side by side. For an average person who doesn't have a greenhouse, potting mix like this are no good. Now let's have a look how our potting mix compares. I've only just recently repotted this plant, so the roots haven't had time to grow in properly yet. Already it is clear this potting mix is going to drain better. All the components are much bigger and there's less water retaining material. If your succulents are grown outside, this is what your potting mix should be like. The good news is that you can amend poor potting mix to better suit your plants. Let me show you how. A good potting mix should be well drained and airy so the roots can breathe and excess water can easily run out of the pot. It should also be easy to get wet and not let the water just run out of the pot without absorbing some of it. It should be light and fluffy. Heavy potting mix can easily suffocate the roots. It should also be free of pests, weeds and fungus, but it should not shrink away from the edges of the pot when it dries out. The problem is many people have different preferences when it comes to potting mix. If you follow succulent enthusiasts on any social media platforms, it is likely you have also seen loads of contrasting succulent potting mix recipes. Many of them can work, but on the other hand, many won't. I grow hundreds of thousands of succulents every year and have seen how they behave in different potting mix in all sorts of weather and conditions. The good thing is succulents are usually hardy plants and many species will cope even in potting mix that is not up to scratch. But if you want gorgeous looking plants, good potting mix will make all the difference. Even if you buy poor potting mix, it can always be amended to better suit the needs of succulents. It is quite easy to make your own, though I would not recommend making it completely from scratch. It is always good to have a base of store-bought potting mix and then add to it. The base should be potting mix that does not have any manure or compost added. This rules out any potting mix for veggies or cheap all-purpose potting mix. The best base is either indoor plant potting mix or seed raising potting mix. This here is indoor plant potting mix. It's a little too fine and water retaining for succulents, but makes a great base as it does not have any manure or compost added. With the addition of a few draining agents, this will be fantastic for growing any succulent. I'm going to use composted pine bark fines. Pine bark fines or any type of wood can be a bit of a controversial choice for some as they can harbour fungus. And yes, I have to admit we do sometimes get fungus growing in the potting mix, but it is not significant enough for us to stop using it. Pine bark fines slowly decompose, releasing nutrients, and if they are composted, the chance of any fungus is quite minimal. Next, I'll be adding perlite, which is lightweight and drains fast. Perlite looks and feels a bit like polystyrene, but is actually volcanic glass. It's light and it can hold on to water and nutrients, but it doesn't make the potting mix soggy. I like adding perlite to our regular potting mix when I know La Niña is going to influence the weather, which means more rain than usual, and it works just great. I also like to use pumice, which is another type of volcanic glass but much heavier than perlite. It is superb for drainage. This here is 2 to 5 mm grade. And lastly, coarse grit. It contains various minerals of different sizes. Similar products can also be found as bonsai mix. For measurements, we're going to use pots and spoons, so no scales are needed. This pot is 10 cm in diameter and 10 cm in height, which approximately equals to 1 liter or 0.3 gallon. The majority of the mix will be the base, or about 3/4. You can roughly divide the pot into 4 parts along the sides and fill up to 3/4. The remaining quarters will be the draining ingredients. While the aim is to make the potting mix well draining, we don't want it just to drain the water out straight away without giving the plants a drink. This is why the majority is the base. To the base we add 3 tablespoons of composted pine bark fines, 2 tablespoons of pumice, 2 tablespoons of perlite, and 1 tablespoon of grit. Now we mix through thoroughly. This should be enough to fill the 10 centimeter pot. And this is the end result. We have good texture with different size ingredients, perfect for any succulent. If the base doesn't have slow release fertilizer mixed in already, a spoonful of fertilizer with low nitrogen should be added. You can watch our video on fertilizing succulents for appropriate types of fertilizer. And there we have it, 1 pot of DIY succulent potting mix. Some of you may argue that it's not very DIY to use store-bought base, but it is the best way in my opinion. Attempting to make your own base can cause many problems such as high nitrogen levels, pest larvae and fungus. Store-bought is or should be sterile. So this here is the recipe you can pause to read. To conclude, finding the right potting mix can prove difficult and it may take a bit of sampling before the right one is found. Sometimes making your own can be a better choice, but do make sure you use sterile and quality ingredients for best results. And that's it for today. I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like to learn more about growing succulents, you can visit our website.